Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Donna Fiesel, and I'm your host of Donna's Edge Talk Show, where truth matters. Thank you so much for watching every day, Monday through Friday, beginning at 1 p.m., and that's on the Central Time Zone, as I get to ride home with you in the afternoon. It's so much fun. You can find us syndicated on Abundant Television, found on Roku, Apple TV, and Amazon Fire. And don't forget the podcast on thenewscasters.com. You can find us on all social media sites. With social media, I mean it. So you can go to facebook.com/D Fiesel. Been doing that for a very long time. And X, Twitter, you can do that, and YouTube as well. But anyway, but social media, we're doing it. Continue sending emails. It just really makes my day. That's Donna at donnasedge.com. Donna at donnasedge.com. I do definitely appreciate you. And we have shows. I mean, you're the boss. You tell us what you would like to see. And that's what we do. Anytime you'd like for me to do a little research for you, I'll do that. I'm a nerd. This is what I did. I hung out in the library. I got quietest in school and who's who. I hung out at the library all the time, read books. So that's what I love doing. I like doing research, and I like doing it for you too. Thank you again for being
with us. But the talking was just under the surface, wasn't it, Donna?
Yeah. Well, I'm still quiet. You know, a lot of folks tell my husband, Phil, I say, I bet you don't get a word in edgewise at home. And he goes, she doesn't say anything at home. So, I'm still that quiet, nerdy girl. So, to a grown-up 66-year-old woman now. I've got Barry and Kathi Holcomb with me. And it's always a pleasure to have them. And I had to take a little bit of time off. You guys did. And I'm so glad we're back in the saddle again, because I sure did miss these segments.
We miss being with you. I certainly would not want to relive the past year.
Sure you would.
Orthopedic issues, but I'm doing much better now, and we're on the mend, and glad to be back with you.
Absolutely. I'm just glad to be with you guys. Kathi, so you're a speaker, and also you're a writer, and so I'm trying to plug you in with somebody I know that would like to have you in their blog. And I think that would be a great thing for you. But you have something coming up. You want to talk about that for a few minutes?
Yeah. So my sister, of course, is her husband is the senior adult minister. I believe that's right now. His role just changed at First Baptist Jacksonville, Florida. And she has been doing for a few years a thing called Tea. And so she invites, women to come, and they have speakers to come and talk. And so since he is the minister of senior adults, then these women will be 55 and older. And I'm going down next Wednesday, actually, to speak to their group there about a topic on intimacy. And one of the things that, of course, if you ever listen to what Barry and I have talked about just through the past times with you, has been on trial and struggle and how God can use that. And so this is my study or my thoughts about gaining into intimacy with God through suffering. So we're going to talk about that. It doesn't sound like a lot of fun, like a fun topic. We don't really like suffering. We don't like trial, but in God's economy, it's a blessing. And so that's what I'll be talking about to some senior adult ladies.
Well, something, I know it's not fun, but it's happening to everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And on some level. So everybody wants to hear. They want to know, well, what can you do about struggle? It's not fun. But I learn a lot going, I don't like struggle, but I can always go back and see that there's always a lesson, something for me to learn, to be a better person if that's possible.
Absolutely.
Even Jesus suffered. It seems to be the Father's chosen instrument for his children to make them more like him and to draw them near to him. So,
yeah,
intimacy with God.
Barry mentioned, even Jesus suffering. And one of the things that has been, just interesting or kind of a struggle in understanding is that verse that talks about Jesus learned obedience through suffering. And I was looking up, just to prepare for this talk, some of the commentaries that I read gave some great insight. And this, I don't know, this just really spoke to me. And I think this would help people as they go through their own flavor of trial. We all have different trials, like you said. Everybody is going through it. It may look different, but it has the same kind of impact on us. And so the verse that says Jesus learned obedience through suffering, one of the commentaries said that he learned obedience meant that he moved from untested obedience into suffering, through suffering into tested and proven obedience. And I love that because, I mean, we know Jesus was perfect, of course, but he came and he allowed himself to be put in a limited, a human body, a body that was limited. And so he came with, he was going to obey, but it was untested obedience, if I'm making sense saying that. So he goes through suffering and it becomes tested obedience. And, that applies to us as well, because we could say all day long, Lord, I know your grace is sufficient. It's sufficient. It's sufficient. But we don't really experience that and believe that and walk in that until we go through a trial that makes us think, oh, is it enough? Is it sufficient? Is his grace sufficient? And so I think trial brings us to a point where our faith is tested, where our obedience to walking in the word is tested, if that makes sense. So I don't know, it's just been something I don't, want to go through suffering. I don't think we've ever wanted to go through trial and suffering. But the beauty of the Lord is that he will bring beauty from ashes. He will take you through, and he kind of reveals yourself to yourself. He knows what we are on the inside, what we struggle with. And so as he reveals that to us through trial, then we can just go before him honest and vulnerable and allow him to work on those areas that need to be changed.
Well, some of us don't have quitting sense. And I hear this from Phil all the time. He says, you know what? You have to just be knocked in the head so that you'll go rest somewhere. And sometimes I like to see the forest for the trees. And because it's easy just doing stuff, I just like to be busy. And sometimes I just have to kind of be jolted just a bit, so I can kind of get it.
Well, and I think that's true in the, the idea of transformation, because we study the Word of God. It's not just for head knowledge, it's for a transformation. And I think a lot of times I think believers just maybe we're deceived. Maybe it's the United States of America, the culture that we live in, but sometimes we just think it's enough just to read the Bible or to go to church. And sometimes God has to nudge us a little bit, like what you're saying, to get us to realize that it's more than just reading the Bible. And that's a lot coming for me to say that. That's a lot coming from me, because I have always felt like the Word of God is the most important thing. And it is. So don't hear me say it's not. It's foundational. But it's, what do you do with it? I mean, it's to be lived out. It's to be like, we've talked about this before, but Paul David Tripp says the nowism of the gospel, or street level Christianity, where you read this stuff and it sounds good. You read it, but it's not impacting your life in a transformative way. And, I just think God knocks us into, he nudges us. Sometimes it's a little bit more painful than other nudges.
Yeah, I have to be knocked into it. I'm one of those. So let's talk about, you and I have talked about this, Kathy, several times. There is definitely a difference between men and women, and the way we think and the way things get through our minds. And when we have open conversations with our husbands, sometimes, it's just a little bit different. But let's talk to the woman who is just real, because I was there once. You have a career, you're busy, you got stuff you got to do at home, you got your kids, you're running back and forth, blah, 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 blah. And you're reading it, but you're not reading it. I mean, you're reading it, but you're not comprehending. Is that a stumbling block that maybe Satan puts in front of us sometimes, just so we're not getting it?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. I have, I've been through, like you, I'm like you, we've gone through the seasons of life, whether it's, child rearing or busy, at work, and now maybe we're older, it's a different season. And I mentor, disciple young women who have young children. And I know that a part of their struggle is not having the time, not being able to spend the time in the Word, and many, I mean, I think the guys too, you know, have a real struggle with that. And I, you know, I want to say this carefully because I know it's a season. It's a season that you go through, and life can change as your children get older, and you'll have more time. But during that time of my life, I just worked on making that a habit to spend time with the Lord. And if it meant getting up earlier, which I did, that was kind of my go-to. It wasn't staying up late. I'm not a late timer like Barry is. I would get up early and spend time. But I do think there is some lies of the enemy that say you don't have time, you know, other things are more important. I mean, I think for men and women, jobs can be more important than spending time in the Word. But I love this about God, is that He gives us grace even when we, you know, are not quite where we need to be with Him. And some of that, just not to go in a vicious circle here, but some of that is trial. Some of that is the suffering that He, you know, He uses to bring us to a point where we say, okay, God, I need this. I need you. I want to change. I want to be different. It's sort of like you get to this point where you're just like, okay, I'll do it. I'll obey you because
I give up. I give up.
I give up. I love that. Yes, I give up. You know, I think that is true.
And it may be that He jolts us with trials to pull us out of that mode where, yes, I'm reading it or I'm going through the motions. Yes, I go to church, but nothing seems to change. And trials and suffering seem to have a way of getting our attention to say, okay, God, what is it you're trying to say? You know, we have a family in our church who lost the patriarch of the family last week in a sudden death. He collapsed at work. You know, was dead by the time he got to the hospital. We've got another family in the church right now with a teenage daughter in the burn unit at UAB just this week with some burns to her hands and feet, you know, an accident cooking. You know, those things get you in a position to listen. And if we will listen, I think the trial is not wasted. It's tragic when trials are wasted, when we go through things and we don't ever gain out of them that intimacy that says, God, I'm listening now.
Mm-hmm. Kathi, let me ask you a question, because as an older woman, but I want to do a disclaimer. First of all, my daughter-in-law is light years ahead of me. I mean, you know, she's the biggest help to me instead of me being the help to her. But I'm talking about mother-in-laws in general. Yeah, sometimes a mother-in-law can, and they mean well. You know, they want to say something, and I don't want you to make the same mistake I did. You know, that's usually the way it starts coming out. How can you offer advice, or should you offer advice to your young daughter-in-law or your son-in-law?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Or your son, your daughter.
Yeah, that's one that I'm grateful for young women in my life who share with me their stories of their mother-in-laws or their mothers, and I have really learned from them how to be a mother-in-law. I'm not saying I'm the best. I mean, we'd have to ask Ludmilla, who is our daughter-in-law, about that. But I was telling them the other day, being a parent of an adult, that doesn't come natural. I mean, we're learning as we're living. We're learning how to parent adult children as we're going, and learning how to be a mother-in-law in action. I mean, in real time. So, but you know, I think for me, as far as being, even using the scripture as words of wisdom, be quick to listen, slow to speak. You know, that you know, I know her tastes are different than mine, so I don't always have to share my opinion. I don't always have to give her what I would do. You know, to honor her child rearing preferences, and I believe we've done that. Yeah. I mean, you know, because the relationship is more important than me trying to, you know, to make her be whatever I think she should be for my son, and then just a lot of prayer in the areas where I believe that she would be, you know, a better wife in an area, maybe. I mean, even that might be my own personal opinion. That may not even be the Lord's, plan for her. So, the scripture to me is always your guide, always the guide in how we're to live. And even God gives us that we're to train the younger women how to love their husbands and love their children. And, I think that is something that, we need to do well, and we need to, to teach them too.
Just about the time you get them raised, they're grown, and the learning curve starts all over again. But I can just say this about Kathi. I mean, asking the question you asked, I've watched her, with our daughter-in-law. Our daughter-in-law grew up in Brazil, so she is Brazilian. She spoke Portuguese as a first language. She's a beautiful young woman who has a thick accent. She speaks great English, has an accent that has a little bit of a southern drawl to it. I just love it when a word like school comes out, and in her Brazilian English, it's school. But I think the thing that Kathi excels at, and I think this is just across the board with women, and I don't know, just watching her, this would be my advice. We always have advice to give, but the key is what she's already said. It's in the relationship. It's just in building a relationship. You gain clout with relationship. You don't go into. I mean, there was no way when we first met Ludmila that we could have said, "Now here's what you do. You're now our daughter-in-law." We had to learn to love her well first. She had to learn to love us. I mean, there were cultural differences, language differences. Mm-hmm. The way she was raised was different than what we raised our kids. I mean, just different from, one country to another. Even her church background, is different from what ours is. So Kathi has just loved her. We have just loved her. And it wasn't the easiest start because we didn't have a lot of advance notice to them getting married. It was about a 2-week notice maybe. And we didn't even know her. I think the third day we ever laid eyes on her, we found out. No, the second day we ever saw her, we found out they were getting married. The third day we ever saw her, I married them. And I wouldn't do that for anyone. But it was either be involved and marry them or drive a wedge and say, just go to the courthouse.
Oh, yeah.
So, but I just watched Kathi, and over time she's loved Ludmila well. She's loved our granddaughter well, our adult children. She is, I joke with her, she's the center of my universe, but she's the centerpiece of this family. And I think that's the way it should be. And of course, I'm called to be the leader, but the family revolves around her, and she pours into them just in a very, very natural way.
Mm-hmm. It's something really similar to us. So my daughter-in-law is from Russia.
Yeah.
Right here when she was 9 years old. And she was raised in a communist country.
Wow.
I'm talking, it was really, really rough. And they barely got by. She lived in an orphanage, even though she had parents. Mm-hmm. And so, I remember, and all you can do is just love them into it. I mean, you just,
yes.
Because there were some trust issues. And I totally get it. So one time she and I were talking, and I said, I've got trust issues too. I said, not exactly the same as yours, but my family wasn't the best family to grow up in.
Right.
We just started talking and just, and then I told her, I said, now listen, you don't have to worry about me minding your business. First of all, I don't have time to mind your business. And I said, but if you ever need to talk to me about anything, I'm here, okay?
Right. Absolutely.
And I think our daughter-in-law knows that. Her mother is on another continent, and they talk every day. But we are on this continent. We're her family. And so we have a great opportunity. Of course, we've got a grown daughter who is single. And if y'all are praying people, pray for her right now. She's on a plane heading to New York City, which is, to me, not the best place to be the 4th of July weekend right after we got involved in Iran. So, she's aware to be careful. But, we just love the opportunity, whether it's these ladies at First Baptist Jacksonville or our kids. We're the only adults in our adult children's life that have the opportunity to speak wisdom to them. But we have to portion it out very carefully, and we can't do an overkill on it.
No, you can't. I remember, now I love to cook. I mean, I've been cooking since I was 10 years old. I would have dinner done when my parents came in from work. And I mean, I just love doing it, stand up in your chair and cook. Well, Larissa couldn't cook. And so now she can. Now she sends pictures for creations. So now she can do it. But before she couldn't. Well, it was a little intimidating. One time she called me crying. Mm. And of course, I said, "What did he do to you?" So I was, "What did he do?" She said, "Nothing." She said, "I just can't cook like you can."
Oh.
And I said, "Do you think I was born baking biscuits?" I said, "Do you know how many biscuits I've burned? How many were hard?" I said, "My brother even made a remark one time. Hey, if somebody comes in and tries to kill us, we can kill them with Donna's biscuits." I mean, I found it was really bad. I said, "You just have to grow into it, and it'll start making sense." And then she said, well, Brad said that you're the best cook in the world. Well, then I had a little chat with Brad later. And I said, "Brad, don't put a wedge in between us."
Right.
Do that. And he said, "What are you talking about?" And I said, "You could put a wedge between us really easy." I said, "I had to learn how to cook too." I said, "Do you think I was born knowing how?" I said, "You've got to give her some patience and quit saying stuff like that." So sometimes as a mother, we just need to have a little chat with our sons.
Yes.
Because they don't mean to. He would have meant to do that for all the world, none in the world, but he could have, and I wanted to nip that in the bud.
Yes.
And so I said, "No, son, don't say that again, please."
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. She can cook now.
This is what her job was. Okay, so she had three sisters, and they were all adopted by the most wonderful family on earth. Much better people than Phil and I are. I mean, these people were wonderful people, but they gave them chores. Well, Larissa's wasn't to cook. It was to clean the baseboards in the house. Mm. And then she said something about that one time, and I said, "Well, you know what? I feel like you're probably looking at the baseboards in my house." And then we laughed. They're not clean.
Right. I won't do that either. I'm not a good cook either.
But finding the strong points, and that's what you do when you speak, Kathy. I mean, you're looking for the strong points of people, and if people can just learn to build on those instead of what's wrong, I mean, you got to fix it, you got to correct it, but focus a little bit more on what's right and things that you do, those strengths that you have.
Yeah, and I think it's a matter of just your perspective. I mean, even just everyday life, that the struggles of marriage, the struggles of the upbringing that y'all talked about, those things that can impact us. What Barry and I call those things that were packed in your bag, and basically you have to kind of unpack some of those. And keep the things that were meaningful, but unpack those and maybe have a different perspective about that. And one of the things that I don't know spoke to me just in the study of First Kings, actually, which is something Barry has kind of been studying too. But First Kings 17, which I know you'll be familiar with, the story of Elijah, who had spoken to Ahab and said, it's not gonna rain for 3 years. And basically he was trying to prove to Elijah that God was more powerful than Baal, who was the god of fertility and the god of rain. And so he said, well, it's not going to rain for 3 years, and that's going to show you how God is more powerful. And so during the famine, which would certainly be a trial that Elijah, even though he was being obedient to God, he was experiencing the consequence of famine, the trial of famine. And he was sent to what is called the brook Cherith. God said, I want you to go to the brook Cherith, and I will provide for you there. And one of the neat things about that, and we know the story, the ravens provided, food for him. But one of the neat things about it that I've learned is that Cherith means a cutting away. And so God was sending him to a place that, even though he's going to make provision for him, it would soon dry up. And so, one of those things that really spoke to me is kind of a metaphor. So, I understand that, but it's pretty powerful, is the fact that in God's provision, sometimes there's a cutting away in our relationship with other people, in our transformation, spiritual transformation. There's a cutting away. And so, metaphorically, a a brook Cherith, where God is taking things away, like a brook of friendships, a brook of family, a brook of finances, a brook of health. Those things that God will take away to make us desperately dependent on him to see his character and his nature in a very different way than what we may see if he had everything provided for us.
Let me ask you a question about the difference in society, because my grandmother talked of struggles, and then of course my mother talked of struggles than I have, but it just seems like the young women now have a much bigger force coming at them. I mean, that could be like stepping out on your husband, or it could be, just a number of things, spending money wrong, gambling. Just, I know of a lady who actually, her husband had to leave her because she started gambling online, and she just couldn't stop. And they lost everything. They lost the house. They lost everything. She lost her husband. The whole works, because social media, you've got, 500 channels on television now, your pick. To me, it's 500 channels and still nothing to watch. But anyway, we watch Andy Griffith reruns all the time. But do you feel like, do they have a bigger struggle than we did? How can you handle that? I thought it was we were growing up. My goodness.
I do think they have a bigger struggle only because of society today. And like you said, social media, this idea of, people are perfect and they only show pictures that are perfect, and they have all these things that, these filters that make them perfect. And so I do think there is a struggle with that. More now, some of the ladies too that I disciple in my church, I love the fact that they are kind of moving more toward homeschooling. They don't care if they wear makeup. They are, they're a little bit different than I was, growing up, when I would put on makeup to go to the mailbox, and so I love that about them. But I do think there are a lot of forces out there to break up the family. I know more people who've had committed affairs, who it's just amazing, even within the church, just times where adult people may think that it's okay that happened. And I mean, even church staff that we know, just 2 or 3 in the last, couple of years that infidelity. And so I do think there's a lot that comes against them. Yeah,
we can think of 3 people at a former church we were affiliated with that have had adultery. Our church has had an onslaught of that here in Belmont. And then just all of the outside pressures that add to that. There's a different mindset, it seems, too, among some of these younger adults. The pressures of media. I mean, media is a strong, and if you get into the wrong kind of media, it changes your mindset on things that we've grown up thinking. I mean, the alt-right media sources cause thinking that's way off the edge. So the struggles, I agree. There are more struggles today in the lives of young adults than there were even when we were raising our kids, and it was tough then.
Yeah, sure.
Oh my goodness, guys, we're going to have to go. This is perfect timing. We're going to have to go into a commercial break, and I know, Barry, we're going to talk to you this time and let you talk a little bit more.
I don't mind listening. I certainly don't mind listening.
We'll be right back in just a few minutes, guys. Everybody hang in there.
Twin City Used Car Sales has been serving drivers in the Northeast Alabama area for years with a quality selection of late model used cars, SUVs, and pickup trucks. On top of our extensive selection and competitive prices, we offer professional auto financing services for used car buyers of all credit levels. Whether you've just begun your search or you're ready to secure your next vehicle, at Twin City Used Car Sales, you will drive away with the vehicle of your dreams. The sales and finance staff at Twin City Used Car Sales looks forward to serving you, and you can apply for financing online before your visit to our used dealership in Gadsden, Alabama. Check us out on the web at twincityusedcars.com or go by our location at 901 First Avenue, Gadsden, Alabama. We sincerely look forward to serving you. At Lamone's Mexican Restaurant, located in Henniger, Alabama, and voted Best Mexican Restaurant of DeKalb County, Alabama 2020, we're here to serve you with authentic Mexican cuisine. Order easily online by going to lamonsmex.com or call 256-657-3999 to place your order. We're open Sunday through Thursday, 11 a.m. to 9 p.m. and Friday and Saturday, 11 a.m. to 10 p.m. Whether you're celebrating a cozy date night for two or a celebration for a crowd, at Lamone's you'll love our atmosphere and friendly servers. Thank you for dining with Lamone's Mexican Restaurant. At Liberty Bank, we're all about community, whether it's to help with a charity fundraiser or help families in need. Toys at Christmas or a local football team, we're here for you. You see, we realize the importance of family. Sometimes it's to build a new home or necessary home repairs. We're here for you. If you like the feel of a small town bank with all the conveniences of a big city bank, we're here to serve you. You will find us at any of our convenient locations in DeKalb, Marshall, Etowah, and Blount counties in North Alabama. You can call and speak with any of our friendly staff at 256-659-2175 or check us out on the web at libertybankal.com. And thank you for your support of our community. Member FDIC Equal Housing Lender.
I'm excited to announce our Christmas extravaganza is finally here. Get this season's flannel sheets for as low as $59.98. They won't last long, so get them while you can. Our famous My Slippers, they haven't been on sale for over a year. Regularly $119.98, now only $59.98. Our 6-piece towel sets are back in stock with extremely limited quantities, only $29.98. With hundreds of MyPillow products, there's something for everyone on your Christmas list. Bathrobes, duvets, quilts, down comforters, and so much more. So go to MyPillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use your promo code to save on all MyPillow products. For example, flannel sheets for as low as $59.98. Or our 6-piece towel sets, just $29.98. But that's not all. I'm extending our 60-day money-back guarantee until March 1st of 2025. Plus, all orders over $75 or more ship absolutely free.
We're back. My name is Donna, and I'm your host of Donna's Edge Talk Show, where truth matters. And that's why I have these guys on with me, Barry and Kathi Holcomb. And Kathi, again, your speaking engagement, go ahead and shout that out again.
Yeah, so it'll be next Wednesday at First Baptist Church, Jacksonville. It's called Tea, and I'll be speaking to the senior adult ladies. They are 55 and older. We're senior adults. Hard to believe.
That's terrible. I am Medicare official now since the last Sunday.
Well, yeah. Well, I just feel, I'm happy to be here.
Yeah.
Because according to my parents, I should have been dead by the time I was 20. If I had known I was going to live this long, I would have taken much better care of my hands.
I would have taken care of a lot of things a lot better. I obviously didn't take care of my hair. I wore my joints out. By the time I was 60, I was having a hard time getting around. So yeah, a lot of things would be different. And I guess that's a matter of your perspective. How you look at life matters. How you look at your trials matters. The things that she's going to be teaching these ladies about intimacy with God and how that comes out of trials. And we've had our trials. You told me I was going to talk a little bit more, so I'm going to take your word.
Hurry before we change our minds.
We had trials, off and on of various kinds our whole life. Our perspective looking backward now is that none of the trials, even the ones that were really big trials, none of them were as bad as they seemed at the time. Nothing's ever as bad as it seems. Nothing's ever as good as it seems. And, I don't think you learn those kind of things until you age a little bit. You get a little bit more seasoned and you experience some things and you go through some struggles, and you think, well, the sky is falling, and things couldn't be any worse. Well, things can always be worse too. So it's never as bad as it seems. It could always be worse. It's never as good as it seems. It could always be better, but perspective is a matter. So, we've learned our biggest challenge. I guess one of our biggest trials was being forced to resign at a church in Alabama back in January of 2012. We had seen the smoke on the horizon. We knew where there's some fires out there. I'd been trying to put out fires. I had problems on the staff. We had issues, it seemed like church-wide. There were morality issues in the church. I mean, as the pastor, kind of being new, outside looking in, I could see that we had issues of morality. I mean, there was adultery, there was homosexuality, there was drunkenness. I mean, there were all kinds of things that were in the church. There were dishonest business practices among people that I found out about. All the while, the focus seemed to turn to me and what people were disgruntled about. So it all culminated. I think it was the first Sunday night in January of 2012 where I was asked by a small group of deacons to tender my resignation. And the month before, in December, the same person that made the motion on a vote of confidence had made the motion but didn't get a second. And I knew what had happened, so I thought we had gotten beyond it. And then this just kind of blindsided us. So I go home, my wife is upset and crying. Abigail, our daughter, was inconsolable. Life changed completely. We had two kids that we had only moved just about 4 years earlier. They had just gotten established in a school system. Abby was going into middle school. Nathan was going into high school. We were determined that we were not going to make them pack up and move again and try to learn things in a new school. So we stayed in the same city. I got a secular job. I went to work at Walmart. And here I was. I'd been a pastor for 20 years. I'd been a chairman of the board of trustees at the North American Mission Board, the largest domestic missions agency in the country. I had presided over the pastors' conference at the Alabama Baptist State Convention. I knew everyone. Everyone knew me. I was settled into what I was doing, and all of a sudden, we were just without everything. We were without a job, no income. We lost our identity. We lost our sense of community. But here we were challenged to stay put so our kids could gain a little bit of a sense of normalcy and stability out of a bad situation. So I went to work for Walmart, wound up working for them in asset protection for 3.5 years. I was a customer service manager for 20 months in a very busy supercenter. I spent my last 7 months out on the sales floor just making shoplifting cases, which was a whole lot of fun. We could talk someday just about how much fun it is to stop them in their tracks. I kind of was wired for that. But I began working 6 years ago on a degree at New Orleans Seminary. And last year, I took a little bit over a year off from the program just because of the health problems I had. So I'm back in it now. I'm trying to meet a deadline of August 15th to get everything turned in and hopefully defend my dissertation prior to December and graduate this December. So part of the study has been about changing your perspective, and everything we've done. Our life is now built on Deuteronomy 8, verse 2 and 3. And we've talked about these verses before. But the first part of verse 2, God speaking through Moses to the people of Israel just before they crossed the Jordan River into Canaan. He's going to change leadership. Joshua is taking over. He's taking the reins. But Moses gives them this admonition. And he says, "You shall remember all the way that the Lord your God has led you in the wilderness these 40 years. He tested you to see what was in your heart, whether you would obey his commands or not. He humbled you and let you be hungry so that he might teach you that man does not live by bread alone, but on every word that comes from the mouth of the Lord." So those verses have become life verses. And the first portion of the study is about Elijah and just changing your perspective. So, he throws out a proclamation in chapter 17 of 1 Kings, no rain for the next 3 years. And then in the 18th chapter, he comes up against all the prophets of Baal, all these false prophets, 450 of them. You know the story. He's on top of a mountain there on the edge of the Mediterranean Sea, a mountain called Mount Carmel. If you ever go to Israel, you'll visit Mount Carmel. And I hope someday the tourism industry can be rebuilt in Israel. It's a wonderful place to go. Lord willing, we'll have a chance again in this life. In the next life, we will be in the New Jerusalem, so we'll have an opportunity to see that Holy Land. But there on Mount Carmel, we've stood there on top of that mountain looking out toward the Mediterranean Sea. He challenged the prophets of Baal, and so he said, the God who answers by fire, he is God. And you know the story. They chanted, they called out, they cried, they danced, they cut themselves, they did everything they could to get their God's attention. And from morning till evening, nothing happened. Their God did not answer by fire. And so Elijah gets up and said, now it's my turn. He repairs the altar. I love what it says in the 18th chapter, when he's getting ready to issue his challenge. It says that he repaired the altar of the Lord, which had been torn down. And, we were talking about what people go through sometimes, Donna. They read their Bible, they'll rush through a devotion, or maybe they don't even do that. One of the things that people need to do in order to have a different perspective is they need to repair the altar of God in their life. Some altars need to be repaired, whether it's an altar of family devotions or getting your family back in church, or what Kathy's going to be talking about, real intimacy with God, bouncing back from whatever trial it is and getting close to him. But he repaired the altar, and then he took 12 stones and built another altar. And we know 12 tribes of Israel. Everything God says has symbolism, and it's got meaning. So he builds an altar with these 12 stones, and he slays an ox, and he puts it on the altar, and he puts wood around it, and then he has them pour water all over it. So it's just drenched. 3 times they pour water over it. There's even water standing in the trenches that he had them dig around the altar. Everything was strategic. He did everything on purpose. And so then he called out. He called out to God and said, God, I know that you hear me. Very similar to what we hear Jesus saying to the Father when he prayed. And we know from the scripture that God answered with fire. And it says that he put fire down there and everything was consumed. Even the water in the trenches was licked up. And so after that, he took the prophets of Baal down to a brook. They know this Mount Carmel. They know the current day Mount Carmel is the right one because it's the only mountain in that area where you can see the Kishon Brook. So that he took them down, it says, to the brook Kishon. It's still visible. You can stand on the mountain today and look down and see the brook that is there at the foot of the mountain. And so he took them down and he killed them. And then he had another trial. We know the story. The evil king Ahab had a more evil wife named Jezebel. You've heard that. Well, haven't we not heard Jezebel all our life? A lot of people get assigned that nickname of the Jezebel. Mm-hmm. So the next day, she sends a message to Elijah and says, if I don't make your life like one of my prophets by about this time tomorrow, well, she says, I'm going to kill you. And so basically, everything changed. His prophecy of no rain and his victory on Mount Carmel, everything changed at that point. And so what did he do? Do you remember what he did? He ran for his life. And so he went and found a cave at Mount Horeb. Actually, he's not gone to Horeb yet, but he found a cave and crawled into a cave. And I've got it pulled up here just to quote what he said. It says, Elijah arose and ran for his life and came to Beersheba, which belongs to Judah, and left his servant there. And so he went a half day's journey into the wilderness, but it says that he came into a cave. He came up upon a cave, and he crawled into the cave, and God spoke to him and said, Elijah, what are you doing here? And I say it like that because I think that's the tone of voice God used with him. And sometimes, Donna, I think that may be the tone of God, the tone of voice that God uses with us, because he has us right where he wants us in a trial. And when we turn tail and run for our life and we try to do everything we can to get out of the trial, I think God may say, what are you doing? I've got you right where I want you. It's taken me a long time to get you right where I want you. What are you doing here? And of course, Elijah had a massive pity party. He said, I've been very zealous for the Lord, the God of hosts, for the sons of Israel. They've forsaken your covenant. They've torn down your altars. They've killed your prophets with the sword. And I alone am left, and they seek my life to take it away. Well, he had a terrible perspective. So he goes from great victory to difficult circumstances. I think that most people would agree that's usually what happens. These trials come swiftly. They don't give a lot of warning. And so, to make a much longer story short, God sent him to Horeb. He basically went to Mount Sinai is what he did. And God said, go stand on the mountain before the Lord. And God revealed himself. And he allowed Elijah to get a fresh glimpse of who he was. And it says that there was a great wind blowing, and he wasn't in the wind. He said even the wind broke the rocks in pieces. And then there was an earthquake, but the Lord was not in the earthquake. And then there was a big fire, but the Lord was not in the fire. But then there was a sound of a gentle blowing wind. And I love that. I love what God does. In the gentleness of a blowing wind, he spoke. And it says, Elijah wrapped his face in his mantle and went out and stood at the entrance of the cave. And the Lord passed by, and he saw his back. And so, his perspective was everything. And, of course, what happened with Elijah next, it cost everything changed for him. God prophesied to him. He said, you go and anoint one person as king over Israel, one person as king over Judah, and then you're to anoint Elisha as prophet in your place. And that may seem harsh, but, I see it as he gave him a fresh perspective. He allowed him to have a young man to mentor and teach. He put a fresh challenge before him to prepare someone to take his place, all from a trial. And at the end, God didn't allow Jezebel to kill him. He changed his perspective, and he gave him a fresh outlook on what to do. And so that is a mouthful. That was really a mini sermon. Your people are probably saying, is there another channel? Maybe an Andy Griffith rerun.
No, there is one. Can we say some more? Can we say more?
So anyway, it was all about perspective for him, for us, in every single trial we've been in. Because I've been Elijah before. I've been at great heights, really experiencing victories. And then all of a sudden, everything seemed to be taken away. And, even financially, we struggled to make our mortgage payment. There are a lot of people who understand what it's like to get behind on a mortgage. We know what it's like to be 6 months behind and foreclosure is this far away. God put us in predicaments where we had to trust him to get out of it. And he did. He helped us realign some finances and change some spending habits and get some things back on track. We got ourselves paid out of that debt. We actually built some decent equity in the house before we moved. But he allowed us to see what other people are going through. And so, our trials weren't wasted. And our hope in retirement years going forward is to have an opportunity to reach out to young men and women who've been in the ministry and who've lost their perspective. They've lost their ministry. They've been asked to resign. They've been forced to leave because we've been there, and we don't want that trial to be wasted. So I would think that trial did more to draw us near to God in the long run than anything else. And of course, the trials we went through last year, some physical trials, I don't think that really compares. Different kind of trial, but again, we were closer to God.
Do you feel like sometimes we're good in our own way? The number of times I've made the biggest mistakes have been when Donna got in her own way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that's kind of what I was going to say. Just, our cultural view of suffering is that it's based on our culture. It's based on how people view suffering. And I guess they probably viewed it that way, back in biblical times too, because if something bad happens, something must be wrong with you, or you've done something wrong. And now granted, certainly that's true, but also in throughout scripture, you see how God uses that to transform us more into his image. And that's just the truth. There's a lot of scripture that speaks to that, and even Elijah. But there was one verse that I've read this so many times, but it's never really pricked me the way that it has as I've been studying this. But Philippians 1:29 says, "For to you it has been granted for Christ's sake, not only to believe in him, but also to suffer for his sake, experiencing the same conflict which you saw in me and now here to be in me. And, something that is interesting about that is that the Greek verb in that passage for granted, so it's been granted to you to suffer, is the noun for grace. And so for believers, suffering is a grace gift from God. It's been given to you to suffer. So we don't view suffering that way at all. We don't see it as a gift from God. We don't view it in that way. And I promise, really honestly, we may not view it that way because we've not really allowed ourselves to go through it as God would have us. We do everything we can to come away from it, to not see it that way, and not to have that perspective.
Mm-hmm. And we're thankful that perspective has changed. Would I want to go back and repeat some of the trials? No, I would not. But I would say to those who are in a trial right now, it won't last forever. It will get better. So draw near to God during the trial. The best way, the clearest path out of the trial is intimacy with God, and letting him change your entire perspective.
I've had a lot of people come back on me about situations, and sometimes they'll say, if I were you, I would just let that person have it.
Yeah.
And not that I don't think about it. I like to say I have thought about it.
Sure.
But I just feel like it's easier not to. It's to me, it's easier just to let it go. And
it's not easy to let it go, though.
Sure.
It's just not. If I'm being honest, it's not easy.
Mm-hmm.
There was one deacon in the church where I was forced to resign from. He was the one who stirred the pot. It was his idea. He's the one that garnered all the support. It took him 8 full months. And at first, when I was driving down the street of that city, I had already been asked to resign. If I saw him walking on the sidewalk, it was a battle with my steering wheel to stay in the road, not on the sidewalk. I could have just as easily, oops, sorry about that. That perspective is not healthy. It's not wholesome. I sit here and joke about it, but it's not a healthy perspective. And so, God put me in a position late last year. Apparently, we have the same specialist. I go to the same urologist as this man. And I came out of an appointment, and I came out into the waiting area to leave, and here was this man sitting there. And so I could have just turned my nose up at him and walked out and not spoken, or I could have been the Christ-like, godly man that Christ is making me into, that he wants me to be, and go over there and speak to him. And I went and spoke to him. We had an enjoyable conversation. I got to hear about what was going on in his life. He's in a trial. He's in a physical trial. It was miraculous.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have to carry bitterness out of trials with us, especially when it's a trial where someone is hurting.
Right, but something else I've learned too through all of this is, so we read the scripture, we go through these things to learn the character and the ways of God. And one of the things that I have learned is the most beautiful thing about the Lord, that his grace is the same when I fail, when I am, want to run somebody over with my car, when I'm struggling with my viewpoint of somebody or my feelings about somebody. His grace is the same if I fail or if I'm walking in righteousness. His grace never changes. Now, that doesn't mean he's not going to, prick my heart with his word. He's not going to discipline me as his child, according to Hebrews 12. It doesn't mean he's not going to lovingly, remind me of truths. But I guess I just want, the audience to hear that, God loves us still when we struggle with these things as a result of our emotions or whatever. Even Elijah was saying, there's nobody, Lord, nobody. God knew there were 7,000 other prophets that had not kissed the hand of Jezebel or Baal or whatever. And so, God didn't chastise him. He didn't say, you dumb, or I wish you, he didn't do any of that. He just spoke to Elijah, just revealed himself to Elijah. And that's the same God we serve today. Even if we mess up, even if we, struggle with some of that bitterness or unforgiveness. And you know what? We're talking about a trial that we couldn't even compare to a trial of losing a child, of, something that will always be there. I mean, that is something that is, that we can't relate to. But I know God is faithful even in that, as we struggle, even with him, about the whys and the, where were you, and those kind of things that I'm sure people, think about and struggle with.
It's the easiest thing now for me to do is to speak to someone who has wronged me. I used to struggle with that. There's something about that. When you can walk up and it makes them nervous. They're afraid you're going to yell at them and scream at them. And all you're doing is just walking up and saying, I hope you have a great day.
Yes. Yeah.
There's a lot more joy in that than there is in fearing anger.
Freedom.
Yeah, it is freedom. And it's, how are we've said this before, I know, but how are we more like Christ than we are able to give grace to those who don't deserve it, or forgiveness to those who don't deserve it? Isn't that what he did for us? While we were yet sinners, Christ died for us. The very thing that he did for us, we need to turn around and do for others. And we just don't remember that. We don't think about that.
Right. As offensive as our sin was to Jesus, he paid the penalty for us and said, no charge, free of charge.
Yeah, for sure. Now that, I mean, there's a lot of stuff to that too. So I'm not talking about abuse. We've said that sexual abuse, you have to still stay in relationship. We're not talking about that. We're talking about setting someone free, like you said, in forgiveness and giving them grace. There's a lot of gray areas. I understand.
Well, when you set this person free, you're setting yourself free.
That's right.
But I'm going to say I struggled with it at first. It was like, I need to go speak to that person. I don't want to be like they are. I try really, really hard not to be like that. And so I told Phil it was an incident with my sister. And so it was at a voting. We went to vote. And so I saw them in the car. And I walked over there, and they acted like they didn't want to turn around and speak to me. And so I just knocked on the window and said, how's everything going? Yeah. And it caught them off guard. They were expecting me to yell and scream and do like they do. And I just, that's not my style. I don't want to do that. So anyway, I just said, well, I hope y'all have a good one. And then I walked on in. And those came back out.
That I hope you have a good one has to be genuine on your part and on our part. When we go and speak to people, we don't get to go and speak to people and then turn around and mollygrub about them. It's got to be real. And even as much as we might delight in pouring salt in the wound, and dumping burning coals on their head, we don't get to delight in that. We are called to love them. Jesus did not say, hate your enemies and love those that pray for you. He said, love your enemies and pray for those who despise you. Pray for those who hurt you and reject you.
Guys, we're going to have to go. Now, how can folks get in contact with you about your ministry or for speaking engagements?
HometoHeartMinistry.com. That is HometoHeartMinistry.com. It's a webpage. You can see some of Kathy's writing there, some of her blog stuff. You can reach out to me at bholcomb78@gmail.com. I'm going to even give you a phone number. A cell phone number is 256-460-8615. And you can email Kathi at ktbarker, that's KTBARKER, 1965@gmail.com.
There you go. Guys, hey, thank you so much for being on the show with me. It's always a pleasure. Hang around so I can get you set up for next month.
Thanks for having us, Donna. Always a pleasure.
Thank you guys so much for watching. You make my day when you send email. Continue doing that. Donna@Donna'sEdge.com. Donna@Donna'sEdge.com. Hope you have a great one. See you next time. Bye-bye.